Roganoff, are you ready for this?
What?
The Wisdom of the Sages trainings that are going on.
Where?
At the Eco Village, the Govardhan Eco Village in India.
Why?
To totally transform your life spiritually.
Who?
You, me, Radha Swami's going to be there. Other great teachers are going to be there. Lots of cool people.
How?
You go to wisdomofthesages.com/events. You find all the information there.
Haribo.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
New York City. This is Wisdom of the Sages, your daily yoga podcast. I'm your host today, Kastuba Das. Co-host Roganoff is like he's living the rock and roll lifestyle. It's wild now. He's showing up late for the show. What's with that?
I don't know.
I think you should have been on that tour. See, he's crawling out of bed right now. He's struggling. I don't know if he's jumping in the shower quick. He's trying to get it together. He's going to be with us very soon. But that life on that touring life is tough. I can see that.
Yeah, those late nights.
The late nights, they kill you. I went to at Roganoff's request, I went to the show and had a wonderful time. It was nice to spend time with him and with Parmananda and other guys in the band who I hadn't met in person. They're really youth of today. They're really, really nice guys. And everybody else, saw a lot of old friends there and all that. Hung out with Bhakti Louie the whole night, and others, so many others. But I got home. It was like 12:30 or something. I got to sleep at like 1:30. Yesterday, I was useless.
Yeah,
I was just trying to recover from the whole thing.
That's rough.
Yeah, so we'll just figure out what Raghunath's going through. So hopefully he's going to be with us soon.
Yeah, and I think he also has lost his voice too, or he's rather hoarse.
So he may be with us, but he may not be able to speak. So he'll be hopefully checking it soon. But we have a special guest here today. We have Ganesham Das, who is one of our original interviewees that we had on the show. And we'll bring Ganesham in a few moments. But today's question and answers, and we have a question that we felt he is far more qualified to answer than ourselves. So we'll be bringing Ganesham on real soon. But meanwhile, Mara, do we have any announcements to make? What you got?
We do. We have a Bhakti recovery group meeting today at 9:30.
Okay.
And then tomorrow in person at the Bhakti Center is their in-person meeting.
That's a new thing.
Yeah, exactly. And then we don't have a show tomorrow. We'll take the day off.
Okay. I think Roganoff's going to need it.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay. And there's also an Urban Devi meeting tomorrow.
Oh.
If people are interested. Yeah.
Do you know the topic and the subject and all that?
It's Rukmini Devi Dasi.
Okay.
Yeah, I had it up, but I lost it now.
That's for ladies. Yeah. It's online. It's at what time? 11:30 or 11?
11 to 12:30.
And you go to the Bhakti Center website, bhakticenter.org. You look for Urban Devi. That's just for the ladies, guys. Give them some space.
Oh, the topic is devotional theater.
Devotional theater. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's Q&A day. And as I mentioned, sometimes we get these questions and Roganoff and I look at each other and say, we need some help. And this was that type of question. But Ganesham, Prabhu, welcome to the show. We need to unmute him. Has to unmute. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great. Nice to be with you all again.
I miss Ganesham. He used to live in New York with us. And now he's down in Florida. It's a long space between us. But anyway, I'm always happy to see your face. Ganesham is just someone that I just, from the core of my heart, I have deepest respect and affection for. Just always, I've known you since you became a monk or became a brahmachari back in, what year was that? About 2000, 2001?
Yeah, 2001.
2001. And then you lived as a monk for how long at the Bhakti Center?
Almost 12 years.
Okay, almost 12 years. So that's like kind of like me. That's about the same amount of time.
And then he married the lovely and talented and learned Bhakti Lata, who recently, over the summer did like a week-long retreat with us that we helped arrange and that people just absolutely love. So please give my love to Bhakti Lata. And when he got married, he took up the occupation of we would call it a hospital chaplain, I suppose, right?
Hospice chaplain.
Hospice chaplain. Okay. And where were you working in New York?
In New York, I worked at New York Presbyterian Hospital for 6 years as a palliative care chaplain.
Okay.
And now working as a hospice chaplain. So difference being I'm driving to people's homes where someone is passing away and offer support there rather than at the hospital.
Right. So it's especially this end of life counseling that you do. That's your field, especially?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we received a question, Ganesham. We wanted to reach out to you to help us answer this because we felt, this is, not only are you, learned in Bhakti and just in my opinion, just a person that's, whose spiritual life is quite deep, but this is especially in your field. So this is coming from Amber, who sent this in via the Discord thread. And she writes the following. She says, I have a question to put forward most humbly. My brother left his body. He passed away coming up on 6 years ago at the age of 27. And that's never easy. He lost a battle with cancer and left behind a wife and 3 small children. It was a difficult time for my family, and my mother experienced tremendous suffering, anger, and denial. As one would expect, that experience, and as one would expect, that experience has changed her and all of us forever. I do my best to support her and spend the anniversary of his passing with her every year, but I realize I may be putting aside my own grief in order to be present for her in the ways that she needs. Okay. I'd imagine you come across this kind of thing all the time. You told me the other day that currently how many people are you counseling at this moment? Like how many people are on the table for you in this?
72 people. So
72.
I'm the only chaplain at this particular hospice organization. And so, I don't have to see everybody constantly. There's large gaps between the next visit and so forth, but I'm definitely juggling, 72 patients right now.
As we were reading this, because here's someone whose loved one has passed away 6 years ago. As we were reading it, I was wondering, do you check in on people like a year later, 2 years later? Is it that part of your job as well?
Yeah, we also have a bereavement counselor who keeps in touch, beyond the time the patient passed away. So I make a call, afterwards, a few days afterwards. I check in with family maybe for a couple of weeks, and then someone can continue, someone besides me can continue if needed.
Okay. So the letter continues. I am new to Bhakti, and in the time that I've been learning, I feel more humble, more patient, better able to serve others, and to send and receive love. I'm grateful for my process and discovery of Bhakti, which has been joyful. But sometimes exploring loving devotion can leave me feeling emotionally exposed. Sometimes I feel a little bit like a snail without a shell, and I'm nervous about old and unaddressed grief coming up and how to deal with it. I haven't felt his presence in a long time until last weekend during a kirtan I attended. My question is, in what ways do you think I can use the teachings of Bhakti to open further and explore my feelings about my brother positively, or at least honestly? How, if at all, can I replace some of the emotional defenses I think I've been using to put aside my own feelings in order to better honor my brother, support my mother, and create a more connected way of dealing with his passing for myself? Are there passages or readings I should explore, or other tools that might lend some support or guidance? Thank you. Okay, that's it's such a honest, vulnerable, important question, and one that, again, I really felt your knowledge and your experience in this field will speak to it much better than I ever could. So, Ganesham, what could you share with us and share with Amber?
Well, I can see that she's very self-aware because I was looking at this question this morning, and I could see that the answers are already hinted at and intuited in the questions themselves. You know, it's like she's starting to recognize what she needs to do, but she wants some confirmation, but you can see she's very self-aware. You know, when there's loss, I always try to understand it, and, you know, the distinction between there's a natural sadness when you lose somebody.
Yeah.
But there's also like a conflicted depression that's possible. And, you know, it's important a little to understand the difference between these two. You know, with a natural loss, you know, you can imagine this, a mother or a sister losing their son or their brother. You know, it's simply awful watching that person pass away. I was with a lady just last week, and her husband passed away from Huntington's disease.
Okay.
And it's when a man has Huntington's disease, they say there's a 50% chance that it will be passed on to the children as well. It's like a, you know, disease. It's like the nerves in the brain begin to degenerate. So this lady I was with, she had lost her husband. And then her daughter also had this disease, and she lost her at 18 years old. And now her son was passing away at 21 years old. So, you know, obviously this is just, you know, overwhelming, simply awful. You know, that's just going to take, you know, support, time, healing. And there's so life just has this natural sadness that sometimes comes upon us that we just have to, it just has to be gone through. And it's not much that can be said about that. But there's a difference when, you know, if you can experience sadness in a very clean and direct way, then you can actually bear it. You can bear any emotion, however heavy, if it's experienced in a very clean and direct way. But the problem is, we also already have, from our life experience, we have a conflicted heart. And then when we experience loss, these things mix the sadness of the loss, but it also lands on a heart that's already conflicted. And then it becomes like it can become like a lingering depression. You know, so many other things become difficult.
What do you mean by conflicted heart?
You know, like, you know, I was looking at this question and little things I was noticing, but she's saying she feels like she has unaddressed grief. You know, so when we're children, you know, we experience some pain and some grief or something like that. And what we do is we begin to numb our feelings because we don't want to experience that again. So without knowing, we do this unconsciously, of course, as children. But whenever there's pain, then the way you guard against that pain is to sometimes withdraw from your feelings or numb your feelings. And then we just go on with life. And the problem is that becomes a habit. We get older and we still do that. You know, she's mentioning this in her question because she's also saying that I think there's something I need to do for myself before I just continue to support my mother and face what's happening. I need to see what's going on inside of me. You had something, Kastuba?
Well, I was just wondering, okay, so you're saying someone may numb. What's the alternative to numbing? Like what process do you go through?
Yeah. And that's more like I was saying, this natural sadness. When sadness comes upon us, there's a way we can deal with it. You know, in sadness, we just accept without self-pity or without hopelessness that this is a painful and terrible fact of life. And it's actually beyond my power to change or to control it. You know, when you just face it in that clean way, just
rather
the reality
than just
of what's
trying
happening.
to think of something else, or
yeah,
okay.
Pushing it aside, or, you know, never really going there. And, you know, because we're afraid of how we may experience it or what our emotions may be.
Is that what you think she meant when she said, how, if at all, can I replace some of my emotional defenses? Is that what we
I think
call it?
she's recognizing that she's used emotional defense. She's used defenses instead of facing directly what is there. You know, like again, one of the defenses is to simply not deal with it. Or like I was saying, as children, we may numb it. We, you know, like there's a very soft spot in the heart. The heart is soft, right? The heart is the seat of feelings and the emotions. And when you experience pain, sometimes we toughen that soft spot.
Right.
You know, we make it tough. And even though it's, because it's scary, it's vulnerable, but we try to make it invulnerable.
And I'd imagine when you have to care for another relative, like in this case, Amber had to care for her mother, who was especially distraught. Maybe there's almost like a need to do that just so that you can be there for the other person.
Yeah, and that seems to be an issue in the question as well, that she's recognizing that she needs something to do for herself, but at the same time, she wants to continue to support her mother in what she's going through. But, you know, it's important for us to realize that it's, unless we really understand what's happening inside of ourselves, unless we know ourselves, we don't really know others. We can't really truly know others. And unless we understand ourselves, we don't really understand others. Unless we support and respect ourselves, we can't really support and respect others in the best way, you know? So there's this link between me, others. You know, sometimes we think, well, I can, you know, with myself, I can treat myself however I want, but I'll be very supportive and kind and compassionate with others. But it actually doesn't work because, you know, there's a oneness between us all. There's a difference, but there's also a oneness. And if you're, you know, very harmful to yourself, then the quality of your supporting another person will also be diminished. But if we're really healthy within ourselves, you know, because after all, what are we using to serve others? We're using our consciousness. That's the instrument. So if I'm conflicted and if I have, as she mentions here, unaddressed grief and all these things, and how much can I be there for the grief of another person?
Right.
You know, I'm bringing my consciousness to serve. So what is the state of my consciousness, right?
No, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. So her question is, okay, she's, as you were saying, all that you just shared, she kind of seems to intuitively understand. And so she's saying, what aspects, teachings of bhakti can I apply in exploring these feelings that I have about my brother in a way that's positive or at least honest?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the self-searching is the first place. You know, you can go to Krishna directly. Is it Krishna? She's talking about unaddressed grief in her heart, and that has to be dealt with. So go directly to Krishna and say, let me see what's actually happening inside of me. Let me see, show me what's there. I'm ready now. I'm ready to just see what's there in my heart, and I want to experience it. So we have to let some things come to the surface. You know, think books like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Oftentimes, these books, they start on a very advanced level, and they don't always address the psychological damage that many of us have experienced, you know, because they, you know, the Bhagavad Gita starts off with almost like assuming that you're a healthy human being.
Okay.
You're pretty healthy. You have your dharma. You have your, just imagine that we're talking about, 5,000 years ago, India, a varnashram dharma system, a spiritual culture. And so it's almost assumed that, of course, everybody has a mother and a father. You grew up in this way. You have your teachers, your gurus. And then now from that healthy position, now we can talk about yoga, what yoga is. We can talk about equanimity. Mm-hmm. We can talk about surrender to God, right? So what happened is many years have passed and the world has changed so much. And we've all, growing up, some of these experiences and the things that confront us and the distractions, so much is there. So our psychology is very, we're struggling there just psychologically. And so there's some things we need to do first, even for ourselves. And I would say one of those things is that we ask Krishna to show us what's happening in our hearts, and that we're willing to face it. We're willing to face whatever's there. Allow, first thing is you want to allow any emotions that are buried very deep, allow them to come up. And why do we do that? It's not that just, okay, just express all these wild emotions, but sometimes we need to express them so that we can see what's there and also comprehend what's happening. As the Gita talks about the modes of nature. So you can see the mode of ignorance would actually just hide what's there. You don't want to face it, you close your eyes. Darkness, right? The mode of ignorance means darkness, ignorance, to ignore. So passion now means, okay, I want to expose what's there. And that's a necessary step if one is just hiding something. First thing is to expose it, to reveal it.
Change something something's not right, I got to change it.
Yeah. And then so passion shows us what's there. And then we want to understand why it's there. And that's mode of goodness, to actually begin to comprehend what's in the heart. Why is that there? How did it get there? What do I do? This is like the mode of goodness, is that you start to come to knowledge. But first you have to see. You have to see actually what's there and experience what's there. So I remember hearing this story that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada's guru, they asked him this question. His disciples asked him this question. We're chanting, we're hearing, in worship of the deity, we're doing so many devotional activities, but sometimes it still seems like we haven't made any progress. So what's the problem there? We're doing everything we're supposed to be doing. It seems like there's very little progress. So he told a story. He had these instructive stories. There's a little book with the instructive stories of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Mm-hmm. And he told the story of the boatman. Right. And he said, there's a couple boatman stories, but one of them
the wedding
was,
party?
yes. There's a wedding party, and they have to go at night to this other location so they can be there for the wedding in the morning. And so they hired one boatman to take them across the water. And so they were there at night, and they entered this boat, and the boatman began to row the boat. And of course, it was nighttime. Everybody went to sleep. The wedding party was sleeping. And finally, the light came back. Morning time came, and everyone realized they're in the exact same spot. They hadn't gone anywhere.
Thrown away.
Yeah, been rowing all night long. And they're in the exact same spot. So they discovered that the anchors were dropped into the water. Okay. And so that's, you can think about, meditate on this idea for a moment. And you can see, well, there are anchors. There's something that anchors me in this material world. And it can be lifted out, because the boatman at that point could just lift out the anchors. But he needed the light of the morning
to even realize that the anchor was down.
Exactly. You have to shine some light on what's happening inside of us. There are anchors. We all have different anchors. We have to discover what they are for each of us. Our own, the work that we do in ourselves is to understand what is anchoring me to this material world. But we also just we need Krishna's grace to be able to see that. And that's why I said a good starting point is to just have this willingness to see what's going on in our hearts. If there is grief, if there is hurt, if there is anger, and Krishna, allow me to see it and to experience it. That is going from ignorance to passion, because now we want to see it. And it may come out in an uncomfortable way to begin with.
It sounds like Amber was saying, I was in a kirtan recently and it started to come out, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And, Bhakti will do that, because she also notices, she's also noticing that Bhakti is about the heart. So when we're performing Bhakti, it is going to that heart space. And then sometimes it can be, she said she's getting a little nervous about that, because things are coming up. It's like, again, reawakening things that have been put to sleep within us or buried very deep. And so Bhakti will do that. And we have to be very delicate and careful with how we perform bhakti, because if there is unaddressed grief and all of this pain that's there that we're not really dealing with, and then we perform bhakti, these things will come up. So some of us, we know bhakti is all about service to others, but if all of this is going on in our heart, and we need to really just take some time for ourselves, and we continue just to keep throwing ourselves in service, it's amazing. It's all about devotional service, but service itself can be an escape from this other side of the path, which is looking at yourself in your own heart.
So it's like rowing good and strong, but you still may not be going forward.
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes we can escape into service. Some people overemphasize helping others, but they don't do the work of looking into their own heart, seeing what's there, seeing what's blocking. So bhakti means all these things. We have to look at ourselves. We also have to serve others. We also have our relationship with Krishna, service to Krishna directly. So it's like, these three things, the self, other selves, and God. And we have to make sure all of these things are balanced. But there is this, what I see from these questions here is what's needed is for her to take some time for herself, see what's happening. She talks about, some of these terms she mentions are her own grief that she hasn't really gone through yet. And that's why I'm just encouraging to start off to kind of be willing to face what's there. Ask Krishna to show you. And, we can do this alone too. We don't even need another person. Sometimes if I'm going through something and I don't take the time to kind of deal with it or process it, I'll sit alone and just say, Krishna, okay, what's happening here? And take my time and become still in my mind and in my heart and just let me see what's happening. And then you get some awareness, you get some knowledge, you get some self-understanding. So this is like, bringing it to the light, just like the boatman, like, when the light comes, when the sun comes, then you can see the anchors, and then the anchors can be lifted.
Very interesting. So it's almost like if the practice of bhakti is to like wholeheartedly give your heart, with complete, completely.
Yeah.
In one sense, you can't do that if it's like tensed up, like like a tight fist or something. It's got to soften. It's got to open, and then you're chanting. What you're expressing through chanting, you're actually fully expressing. Rather than kind of it being held back or repressed in some way.
Exactly. Our heart gets hurt in this life in different ways. It gets hurt, it gets damaged, and then we fear bhakti because bhakti means a full opening of the heart, a giving of yourself. But that's not, again, that's why I see the Gita and things like this. It's almost like there's, assuming that that's okay. That's already in place, that you're a healthy human being,
right?
And so now you're going to understand what yoga is all about. But for us, it's like we really have to do a little personal work. And it's not like we have to know all the ins and outs of my psychology. We don't have to go too deep into it. We have to see some basic things that are preventing me from giving my heart. And we have to ask Krishna to help us face those things, bring those things out and seek the devotees, of course, too. The devotees are on the spiritual path and they've gone through these things, and we can also get good help and advice from them.
Nice. And that's really helpful. And I also appreciate that you said it's not that we all necessarily need to have a team of psychiatrists working on us to get to, but there's some basic fundamental patterns that people fall into that we need to be able to recognize and let go of.
Yeah, self-searching,
Okay.
It's like we're checking our motives. We're seeing, what is preventing me from really serving with a quality, like a real quality of a genuine desire to serve. What is preventing that within me? Because we know basically what it is. There's egocentricity, we're self-centered, but there are some nuances for each of us. And the more we see those things, the more we can start to separate from them.
This is great. And what you're saying, just, there's beyond the help that you're sharing with Amber right now, I think you're kind of like drawing all of our attention to just like kind of a basic principle that, yeah, you know, in our day and age, we are, most of us, dented in some way or another. And so we're doing these bhakti practices, but, and that's all fantastic and good. But sometimes it may be at some points in our life that we may go through some kind of trauma, some kind of stress that needs to be addressed. This is also, we see this in our bhakti recovery group, the people that are, you know, dealing with their addictions, that are, you know, they may be rowing away 10 16 rounds a day or something, but there's stuff that needs to be dealt with, so let's deal with it. And you know, you're part of one of the people that I've been speaking with about, you know, also providing other levels of care for our listeners, something that we hope to be bringing to people, you know, the different obstacles that we're facing in our practice. Sometimes it has to do with you know, grief. There may be other psychological issues. There may be philosophical issues. There may be different bumps that we hit that we won't be able to wholeheartedly give ourselves to this path unless we open it up and really look at it and ask about it, think about it, contemplate it, share on these things. So thank you for this, Ganesham Prabhu. But I want to dig a little deeper, or return to Amber's question. She also mentioned, are there passages or readings that I should explore, or other tools that might lend some support or guidance?
Yeah. You know, there's a verse that I really like to use a lot, which gives you a kind of attitude, I think, the attitude for facing suffering.
Okay.
This is Bhagavatam, famous verse. Kastubaji, you know this verse,
I
but
think it may be coming from Queen Kunti.
no, that one, that's
no.
also good. But
That's a big
this is Lord Brahma, and it's Lord Brahma's prayers, the 10th
Oh, yes,
canto,
yes. One of our
14th
favorites.
chapter,
Yeah.
text 8. I can read it if you like. I
Please.
have it here.
Please do.
So this is Lord Brahma's prayer to Krishna, and I see it as how to deal when some suffering or some difficulty comes into our life. What's an attitude that's actually will elevate me, rather than like you know, I was saying, you know, sometimes some difficulty comes into our life, some suffering, and it brings us down and we get stuck in it. But this is a kind of, there's a lot in this verse to reflect on. So Lord Brahma says, my dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds and offering you respectful obeisances within his heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. You know, like sometimes when suffering comes, when we're angry and we're mad about it, it's, if we look very deep, we're actually resenting Krishna, because this world is set up with his laws, and his laws, even the law of karma, these things are all good for us. But we all have a kind of reaction, which is kind of revealing that there's a resentment for the way things are. You know, something comes into my life, some event happens, and we think, this shouldn't happen to me. Why is this happening to me? Or, you know,
why would you make this happen to me?
Yeah, why would this be allowed? You know, so it shows like we don't trust, we're not trusting in the laws of God. And so I'm not, you know, of course, this is it's almost like an instinctive reaction to react that way. But if we look very deep, how, you know, we're resenting the way things are, and the way things are, the way things have been created by the Supreme Lord. He's all good. So there's a way when suffering comes that we can also trust. We can endure through it. And that's why this verse says, even in the midst of the suffering, we're offering respectful obeisances within our heart to the Lord when it comes upon us. Maybe, you know, this is bewildering me, this is confusing, this is awful. At the same time, this trust that if I go through this, patiently awaiting the Lord's mercy, offering obeisances, then Krishna will be there immediately, and he can heal what's happening. He can heal my heart. He can help me.
Prabhu, thank you so much for that. That was very helpful for me, and I hope it's been very helpful for Amber. Thank you.
Grateful to share. Hope something was helpful.
Yeah, I believe it is. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And I think we have Rogo. Rogo, are you here? Are you around? Is he unmuted? You seen
Yeah.
him? Did he leave?
Yeah, I think he's
Hi.
back.
Oh, there
I'm
he is.
here.
Okay.
I'm here. My voice is a little cranky. Hi, how are you guys? That was a beautiful answer, Ganesham. All right, Bo.
Thank you,
That's my
Ganesh.
voice today. That's what you're gonna get.
All right, you still got one more show to go.
Yeah, one more show. I can really relate to what he was saying.
Yeah, let's hear. I wanted to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, I actually, I had a divorce last year in
Yeah.
April, and my way of dealing with it, and we were both living together. My way of dealing with it, and my marriage wasn't great for sure. I knew that, but when my wife said she wanted a divorce, I just dealt with it by, I booked a lot of programs for myself around the country, around the world. The kids were homeschooled, so I would bring the kids with me on and off. I basically traveled, and what I thought was going to be very helpful, travel and
Stay
teach.
busy and keep my mind in a good place.
Keep my mind in a positive place, speak about spiritual truth and wisdom, which is what I do, and just keep running.
Yeah.
That's what it was, but it did have a positive effect. It was hearing transcendental sound and reading.
Serving.
But I didn't really have time to grieve, and there's grief on so many different levels. Grieving for myself, grieving for my children, and what will Christmas or holidays mean to them? How will they feel? What they're going to go through? How will those things feel to me? The things, the dissolution of a family unit. And I found myself, when a year came around and the kids got settled in a school and my wife moved into a new place, I found all this stuff coming up that I didn't deal with. And I was like, well, I should be over this by now.
All this time has passed. I've been busy.
Time has passed.
Yeah.
I've gone. I've spoken the truth. I've dealt with it, but I didn't really sit with it and feel the pain. But I will say, at least there was a framework to work with. What is the framework? I don't own anything in this world. Life is temporary. I have to zoom way right out. I have to zoom out to understand the bigger picture. God has a divine plan. All these things that Ganesham were saying, but I neglected this part, and you can't neglect yourself. And it was a beautiful point Ganesham Prabhu was making. You're also in that equation, and to feel that pain instead of just and removing that shard of glass instead of letting the skin heal over it. I feel like it's a necessary step to actually moving forward. My anchors were down.
Right. You were rowing. You were rowing good. Really.
I was rowing around the world.
Yeah. And that doesn't, in any sense devaluate the service that you're doing. You're doing wonderful stuff, and I think on a certain level, it was helping you too to be engaged in that way. But at the same time, there's something that needs to be dealt with. Ganesham Prabhu mentioned, and you're alluding to now, like he mentioned 3 places where the intention has to go, right? To God, to others, but also to oneself.
Yeah, and there was no you can't trick the body and mind. It knows what it needs. It's like it knows that it needs to heal itself. So I found when I thought I dealt with it in a healthy way, my nervous system, my mind, it came up, and a marrow witness with me. I think it started when I was in Nepal last year, that I just had all this anxiety was coming up, and I've never had that in my life, like an anxiety attack where I felt like, I think I'm having a heart attack. I think I'm having a stroke. I've never felt like this. And we called a friend who listens to the show, who's a doctor in America. It was in the middle of the night. I woke up and I just said, I think something's tremendous is happening to my body right now. I've never experienced these emotions and these feelings. And I told him all the symptoms, and he goes, sounds like you have tons of anxiety. I go, I have no anxiety whatsoever. Completely fine. Everything's perfect. My marriage dissolved. I wanted it to dissolve. It was going nowhere. And then we just started talking about, well, what does that mean for you? What does that mean for your children? What does that mean for your home? What does that mean for your business? What does that mean?
Right.
And I realized
let's really take a look. Yeah.
I've never had time to actually fully digest this. So
Right.
it did, but we need those three are very cool. You said working on myself, working in devotional service
with God, with others, with yourself,
and with God. Yeah. So thanks so much, Ganesham. I really needed to hear that myself. I think, as well as a lot of people out there.
Right. Roganoff. You say,
Sorry, I'm late.
How you going to do the show tonight?
You know what?
Right.
No voice whatsoever yesterday, and I just got on licorice root sticks, and I don't talk, and then it just works. My voice was pretty good on stage last night. There's the last show tonight. Yesterday in Philly was great. A lot of our Zoomers were there. It was beautiful. We distributed Prashad. We distributed Bhagavad Gitas. And it was a super fun show, Philadelphia.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I enjoyed it, Roganoff, the other night.
Oh, it was so fun. We didn't even talk about that. Kostuba came to the New York show. You know, it was good. That was a special, Kostuba, that was a very special blessing for you because Krishna, Krishna gave that club was like brand new and clean. Okay. It was not too hot or steamy or humid.
What am I, some kind of softie here? You think I can't handle it?
No, I just felt like I always feel guilty if I invite you to these shows because it's just, they're so grimy sometimes. Like yesterday, they was so packed in the room. The stage was packed. The audience was packed. I was like, thank God Kostuba's not here today. But we had our own we had our own backstage that was big and
it's huge.
And all our
club, the backstage is as big as a club.
All our our backstage was as big as a club. And then we had that place where the devotees set up Prashad and a book table. Nityananda Chandra was there. We were chanting shlokas together. His kids were there. It was really nice. Govardhan Lal was there, and
hung with Louis the whole time.
All our old friends from the hardcore scene that are now initiated devotees. Their children. It was like generations of hardcore. Yeah,
well, that was one element of the whole thing, is that the second generation was there, like right up front, or the whole thing, right? It was like, oh, that's Joe Caley's kid, that's Sachi Suta's kid, that's Brahma Horta's kid. You know, it's like they're all the kids.
Yeah,
right
it was super cool.
And I was mentioning to Jai Subhadra, her son, he's got style. You know, Mashin, he's good, right?
Yeah, I gave him the mic. He got to sing a song.
That was a great moment too.
He was there.
Like, he was flying in one direction. You got him by the shirt, and he kept running, and like his shirt stretched about like 8 feet, and then you kind of like brought him back,
dragged him back,
and then you gave him the mic, and he just went off.
Yeah.
But there was a moment, Roganoff, where you ran up kind of like up to the front of the stage, and you went down. It was like early in the show, you know. And do you even remember that?
I fell.
You kind of slipped and fell. I was like,
yeah, you know, you never know. It's like football, sort of. You know, you're never gonna know if you're gonna, get a touchdown or you're gonna get tackled, or there's always guys swinging, diving, like roundhouse kick into your head, and hook. What do you call it? Sort of like someone, hooks you by the skull. It was.
Now, of course, anyway. one of the themes for the night was like one of the opening bands was named Gel. And it was like this girl hardcore band.
Two girls. A
lot of energy. They were tearing it up, Roganoff. And, I'd imagine that was a bit of a challenge, like how are you going to take this on, right?
I don't, thank you, but they were great. You know what?
Well, no, before the show, I said, Roganoff, you are the mighty youth of today. You go up there and you show these girls how it's done, right?
No, they were great. They came. One of them, the singer, came on stage and sang with me at the last song. That was great.
Yeah. No, it was, and a lot of people showed up in the end. Like, there's a big crowd for you guys.
Yeah.
But I'll say this, Roganoff, is that I was thinking, I was watching you up there doing your thing. I hadn't been in that kind of atmosphere for
And I mean, in one sense, really not since the 80s, but although, you know, I went to lots of concerts, you know, to sell books and stuff like that in the 90s. But, you know, I haven't been in that atmosphere for a very long time. But what to speak of, like, kind of like being right there. And I was going through this thing, you know, like where you're going deep into your samskars, you know? It's like,
Yeah.
and these aren't even like thoughts, these are like feelings. Like there's memories is one thing, but like sometimes you actually feel something that you haven't felt for 40 years. You know, it's a very subtle thing. And I was like slightly feeling some layers of that. It's a very interesting experience. But
was it sort of like, I got a stage dive? I got a stage dive.
it wasn't even that. It was just like, it's hard to describe how subtle it is. Just like feeling something that you felt so long ago that, like, oh, I had a different life almost. It's like,
Sure.
I had a different life with different feelings and different thoughts, different awareness. And it's something that's forgotten, but it's still there. It's very, very, it's down very, 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 very deep. And when you experience it, you experience almost profoundly, like you actually taste it.
Sure.
You realize
sure.
I'm in another life, right?
Yeah. This is sort of probably what deja vu is from a previous life, you know?
Maybe, yeah. But this is what I wanted to share, that there's, in one sense, I'm looking at the atmosphere and I'm, you know, and from my yogic perspective, I'm saying this is a tamasic atmosphere. It's dark. It's very loud. You know, it's super aggressive. And I'm not talking about just like your band, which is like very positive. But just like that, you know, the bands that were playing earlier and the music that was being played all night and so on. You know, from my yogic perspective, it's, you know, clear as a bell. This is a tamasic atmosphere, right? In a sense, it's a dark atmosphere. But your band, you know, what you did, and you and your band, and you know, I'd say, of course, Parmananda I've known, and he's been a friend of mine for so many years, and but I had the first time to meet Walter and Sammy, who are also kind of like bright light kind of guys, you know, like they're kind of
Very
like,
much so.
yeah,
When we all four of us get together, we just laugh and laugh and laugh.
yeah, and you could just, in other words, they're evolved people. I can see that, you know, like they're living in that world, but they're bringing something bright into that world.
Yeah.
And so what you did decades ago is kind of like bringing a very positive, bright element into that kind of dark world in a way. I saw that you're still doing it, and you know, especially like the way that you speak between the songs. I was imagining, like, if I were a kid right now, I would say, okay, these guys are like some of the originators of like hardcore. They go way, way, way back. And they've been doing this for many years, and they're still playing the same music. And this person speaking, and every message that he's saying, this isn't like the typical, like, you know, people fall into these, you know, one band is trying to copy the other band and copy their style and copy their attitude. And a lot of it is just kind of negative fu attitude kind of stuff, or just nonsense stuff that just has no value.
Sometimes the words are exactly what we speak against. Like, this one's about revenge. This
Yeah,
one's about spite. This
It's
one's
all about resentment.
Don't
Yeah.
cross me.
Yeah, it's all
like,
that
wait
kind
a
of stuff.
second.
Yeah, so everything that you're saying was like between the messages in the songs and what you're saying between the songs, it almost felt like it doesn't belong in this setting, right? It almost feels like when people speak on this level, it's like at a wedding or at a funeral or at some kind of like some, you know, let's be very thoughtful about life right now. And you know, and I don't know how many songs you played, maybe 20 songs or something like that. And in between each one, it's like it's a short little sermon. It's a short little Dharma talk that's engaging people and encouraging people to think a little bit about life and think about the patterns of your own thoughts and think about the habits in your own life. And do you want, you know, do you want to just do you want to be controlled by this world, you know, without even fighting it? Even you think you're fighting, but actually you're just like completely caught up in it. Or do you actually want to think about it and change it? And that's kind of seems like it's the theme of the band, right? It's like, we're going to change this. We're going to change this. And so you give your sermon, and then it kind of builds up, and then you say, okay, sing it with me. And then everyone, you know, but it's, and then everybody just with full enthusiasm. And that's one thing I was really watching there too, is like, I remember what it was like to just dance like crazy until you have no energy, till you just sweat and you have zero energy left in your body.
with ideally like with a positive, in a positive context.
Sure.
And that experience of exhaustion is very cathartic. I like that. So anyway, I thought it was a beautiful thing. I thought you guys.
It brings up two ideas, like, they say the Ganges River flows from the spiritual abode, and it goes through the different planetary systems on Earth and the lands on Earth. And after it goes to Earth, they say it goes down to the lower planets.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
So I figure like the message of the Srimad Bhagavatam was like flowing through that club, because there's a lot of these people that go to these shows. They've been listening to lyrics of Shelter or of Youth of Today for many, many decades.
Sure.
And these shows are almost like a religious experience for them. They never like officially got into it, but the words or the lyrics have steered their vehicle through throughout the years.
Yeah.
Their self-control, forgiveness, being freed from intoxication. I mean, that's a huge thing. A lot of people are addicted to intoxication. So a lot of these people, they took that very seriously. And it's important that no matter wherever we are, whatever place we're in, if you add a spiritual, it's almost like a spiritual glow light there, it brings light to a dark place. And it was so fun to like sit there and chant. We were chanting chapters of the Bhagavad Gita in the midst of all this, me and Nityananda Chandra. And you just see the people having, the devotees having like a spiritual conversations and talking between songs, and people coming up to me. I mean, think about people coming up to me expressing gratitude, because we got to sit with the devotees. So I got to interact with the fans personally. And that is like this makings of a spiritual culture, hearing spiritual truths, associating with each other, appreciating each other. And all of a sudden you leave feeling high.
Yeah.
Because there is a pleasure in tamas. There is a pleasure in rajas. But there's a spiritual pleasure you come from bringing spiritual information even into a dark place, and you feel really relieved and really light. And that was sort of the takeaway. And yesterday was the same way. Scott was there, and David Charles Wilson and John Burke, and they were all distributing prasad and books, and it was really sweet.
That's great. Well, you guys have been doing it for many, many years, Roganoff. So I share my deep gratitude and appreciation for your service.
Thanks, Prabhu.
Beautiful thing. I think that's it for today. We had one
that was
question, but
fast.
it was a big one. Yeah, well, you came in late.
I'm here at Bob Healy's house. We had a great time with Bob Healy.
I had a great time seeing Bob. Yeah. One more show, Roganoff. Hang in there.
One more show. All right, man. Oh,
Anybody
Jeffrey
want to say
Ackler
hello
was there
to?
last night. Okay, we're going to do it. We're going to Washington, D.C. Looking forward to meeting the devotees. Actually needed.
What's that?
Glad I came in and just got to shut up and listen, Ganesham. I'm glad I came in and got to shut up and just listen to Ganesham. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Every time he comes on the show, he's got such important stuff to share.
I feel it, and I'm hoping to see him in Florida next week, because I'm right after I get back from tour. I'm taking the kids, and we're driving to Alachua for the Holy Name Festival. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to you still got to slow down, Roganoff.
I'm gonna slow down when I get.
When you get to Florida?
How about that?
Okay, you got to go into that. I think you got to spend a day or two just going to that springs they have there, and just go into those springs and rest.
I'm ready. Kastuba, thanks to join you. Thanks to everybody who joined us today.
Yeah.
And thanks especially to Ganesham for bringing up giving perfect answers to perfect questions.
No show tomorrow.
I want to thank no show tomorrow. I want to thank everybody who is coming to the shows and contributing and giving out Bhagavad Gitas and just bringing some light, which could be a dark place, but they bring some light there. And I think we should do the show. Let's see. When's our next show? Monday?
6 o'clock?
8 o'clock. 8 o'clock, please.
8 o'clock Monday? Okay. Yeah. 8 o'clock Monday. Mara, you let everybody know, right?
Yep, will do.
Hi, Mara.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
Oh.